It all started with a protein shake and a parking spot. I had just finished my Tuesday workout back day and I was drained, the good kind of drained. Muscles sore, shirt damp, brain foggy in that post-lift haze where everything feels a little slower, a little quieter. I usually head straight home after the gym, toss some chicken on the SK*let, maybe microwave some rice if I'm feeling lazy. But that night I was running on fumes and didn't feel like cooking. There's this new bistro that opened up right around the corner from the gym. Levine's. I think. Rustic name, black awning, soft amber lights in the window. I'd walked past it a few times before but never thought to stop in. Looked a little too trendy for my usual taste. But something about the quiet glow of it seemed inviting that night. Cozy. Easy. I found a spot close by, rare for that block, and walked in, still half-wired from pre-workout. The host greeted me, asked if I was dining alone, and I nodded. He smiled, led me to a table near the window, tucked off to the side. Not too close to the kitchen, not too close to the door. Just right. I liked it. The menu was one of those minimal, fancy font types. For starters, 6 mains, 2 desserts. No prices listed, which usually means brace your wallet. I didn't care. I just needed food, something warm, something real. I ordered grilled chicken with roasted squash and a lemon water. While I waited, I checked my phone. Nothing major. A couple of messages from coworkers, one from my brother reminding me to book tickets for our mom's birthday. I sent a quick reply, then looked up. That's when I noticed the woman at the table next to mine. She had just sat down. Black coat still buttoned, scarf around her neck, hair mostly hidden beneath a knit beanie. From the angle, I could only see her profile. She wasn't facing me directly. Just another late dinner guest, maybe waiting for a date. I didn't think anything of it. Not until she removed her scarf. I froze. My hands, which had been idly thumbing at my phone, stopped moving. My breath hitched, caught somewhere between inhale and disbelief. I stared. It was Jessica, my wife. She hadn't noticed me yet. She was too busy fixing her hair in the reflection of her butter knife, smoothing the corners of her bangs the way she always did when she was nervous about how she looked. The man sitting across from her, he was already there when she walked in. No menu in front of him, half-finished drink, like he'd been waiting. He wasn't dressed like a colleague. No laptop bag, no tie, no pressed shirt. Just a snug athletic zip-up, gray with navy sleeves, and an unshaven jaw that gave off a lazy confidence. He looked like he belonged to a different world than the one she and I shared. A world of loud brunches and casual cheating. They leaned in close, not physically touching, but closer than you'd expect from two people catching up. She smiled. Not just smiled, beamed. Her whole face softened in a way that used to be reserved for me. Back when we were still newlyweds. Back when she used to reach for my hand in public just because. Now I was invisible. Just another guy at a table nearby. My food arrived. I didn't touch it. Instead, I watched. I know how that sounds. Creepy. Sad. Desperate. But in that moment, I couldn't move. Couldn't eat. Couldn't even think straight. My eyes were locked on the quiet drama unfolding 3 feet away, trying to make sense of it. My wife was on a date. No laptop. No coworker banter. No shared presentation notes. They weren't talking business. They ordered one dessert. One. Chocolate torte, her favorite. Used to be mine too, before it started tasting like sugar-coated obligation. When it came, she let him take the first bite. Then they leaned in again, laughing about something I wasn't invited to hear. His knee bumped hers under the table. She didn't pull away. I felt like I was watching a movie scene I couldn't pause. Except it wasn't a movie. It was my life, my marriage, flickering out in real time under dim lights and overpriced food. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, then suddenly looked up, straight at me. Our eyes met. For a moment, she froze. Her face flickered, like a computer screen trying to load too much at once. Panic, recognition, calculation. All in a split second. Then the mask fell into place. She said something quickly to the guy, too quiet for me to hear, and stood up. I didn't move. I didn't even pretend to be surprised. Just watched her walk over, coat swaying, heels clicking softly against the wood floor. "Hey, babe," she said, like this was all perfectly normal. "What are the odds, huh?" She smiled. Too wide, too rehearsed. I looked at her face. Her lipstick was fresh, eyeliner perfect, earrings I hadn't seen before. Not the casual, I just finished work Jessica I was used to. This was curated. "Funny running into you," she added, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck like it was armor. "I just ran into Chris. Remember him? From uni, we ended up grabbing dinner. Total coincidence." She didn't sit, didn't invite me to join, just stood there, explaining like she was reading off a pre-written script. I nodded slowly. Small world. Inside, my mind was unraveling. Chris. I'd never heard that name before. In 7 years together, not once. Not in college stories. Not in wedding toasts. Not in any of her friend groups. I didn't question her, though. Not then. Couldn't. Instead, I looked past her, back at the man at the table. He wasn't looking our way. He was scrolling his phone, maybe giving her space. Or maybe this was all part of the plan. My hands were clenched beneath the table. I hadn't even realized until my fingers started to cramp. Jessica followed my gaze, then turned back to me. "He's just in town for a few days," she added quickly, too quickly. "Thought we'd catch up." I forced a smile. "Looks like you're having fun." She blinked. Once, twice, then smiled back. But I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. A crack in the porcelain. "Yeah, it's nice to catch up with old friends. Anyway, don't let me interrupt your dinner. You probably need to eat after your workout." She started to turn. I stopped her. Not with words, just a glance. Her eyes lingered on mine a second too long. Then she turned, walked back to her table, and slid into her seat like nothing had happened. They talked less after that. He looked puzzled. She kept glancing over at me, like I was going to explode or stand up and start something. But I didn't. I sat there. I ate one bite of squash. Tasted like nothing. I paid my bill and left before they did. Out on the street, the cold hit me like a bucket of reality. I stood by my car, keys in hand, heart pounding. Not from rage. Not yet. It was something else, disorientation, maybe. The feeling of realizing your world isn't what you thought it was. I didn't go home right away. I drove around for almost an hour. No music. No calls. Just the hum of the tires and the echo of Jessica's voice in my head, trying to sound casual while lying straight to my face. Chris from uni. That lie was going to stick with me. Not because it was convincing, but because it wasn't even a good one, and I still wanted to believe it. That night, I didn't sleep. It wasn't the kind of restless tossing and turning that comes from too much caffeine or an unfinished email. This was different. My body stayed still, locked in place, but my mind ran marathons. I kept seeing her face. That smile. That coincidence excuse. The way she said, "Chris," like I was supposed to just nod and swallow it. I'd seen Jessica lie before. White lies, small things, harmless stuff. But never like this. Not straight to my face while still warm from dessert with another man. The ceiling above our bed didn't offer much comfort. I stared at it for hours. At one point, I turned to look at her side of the bed. Empty. She had stayed out late, apparently. I didn't even hear her come in. She must have known I wasn't in the mood for a bedtime chat. I lay there in the dark, letting memory unspool like an old film reel. Except now, scenes that once felt normal suddenly looked different. Distant. Filtered through suspicion. I tried to remember if I'd missed the signs. That's what people always say, right? The signs were there. But when you're in it, when you're living inside the routine of someone else's slow detachment, the signs don't flash like warning lights. They whisper. Soft. Subtle. Easy to ignore if you don't want to hear them. Now they were screaming. I started cataloging them one by one. The late-night planning meetings that popped up out of nowhere about 3 months ago. Always after dinner, always vague. Some with new clients, others with internal teams. No names, no locations. When I offered to pick her up once, she said no, that it would be too hectic. "We'll just Uber back together," she told me. You don't need to wait up. The first time I trusted her. The second time I tried to ignore the flicker of doubt. By the fourth or fifth, I stopped even checking what time she got home. The new perfume. It wasn't the usual floral stuff she used to wear around me. This one was muskier, deeper. It clung to her skin in a way that lingered in our sheets long after she got out of bed. I'd noticed it twice. Once when she was leaving for work, and once when she got back late and leaned in for a quick kiss on the cheek. I remember thinking she smelled different. Not bad, just different. It was subtle, sure, but it didn't smell like us. Then there was the social media purge. One night, I opened my Instagram and realized our photos, vacations, date nights, even our anniversary post were gone. Archived, not deleted. She told me she was trying to be more private. Said she was tired of putting her life on display. I believed her. I even thought it was kind of mature. I defended it even. Told my brother she was just tired of all the online noise. Now it felt like a cover-up. Like she was clearing space for someone who didn't know me. Or wasn't supposed to. And then the phone habits. Face down. Always. Even at breakfast. And a new lock screen password that she never used to need. Work policy, she claimed. Something about new security protocols at her firm. I didn't press. What kind of man asks to see his wife's phone, right? A jealous one. A controlling one. At least that's what I told myself. There were missed calls too. Names I didn't recognize. When I'd ask, she'd brush it off. Wrong number. Spam. Someone from a client's team. Always some corporate jargon to make it sound boring enough that I wouldn't ask twice. But the biggest one, the one I couldn't stop replaying, was the lingerie. Jessica had always been open about that part of our relationship. She liked shopping for it, trying it on, asking my opinion. Not performative. Just playful *** mate. A shared thing. But a few months ago, I noticed new sets in the drawer. Tags removed. Delicate fabric I'd never seen her wear for me. No mention. No show and tell. Just there. Hidden in plain sight. I remembered holding one piece in my hand, turning it over, waiting for a story that never came. I didn't ask. I just assumed she was planning something. Maybe an anniversary surprise that never came. Maybe she lost interest before following through. I gave her that benefit of the doubt. Over and over. All of it back then felt like nothing on its own. Life changes. People change. That's what I thought. But now it felt like a map. One she'd drawn in secret, leading somewhere I wasn't invited. I got out of bed around 5 a.m., unable to take the silence anymore. Made coffee. Sat at the kitchen island. My hands were shaking and I couldn't tell if it was the caffeine or something deeper. Grief, maybe. Betrayal comes in waves, and that morning felt like drowning in the slow one. The one that suffocates, not crashes. I kept waiting for her to come downstairs. When she finally did, it was like nothing had happened. Hair tied up, wearing the same coat from the bistro. No makeup. She looked surprised to see me already awake, like I was the one disrupting her morning. Couldn't sleep? She asked. I shook my head. She poured herself some coffee. Didn't say anything for a moment. Then leaned against the counter like she always did. Like the world hadn't shifted 20 degrees sideways the night before. I hope your dinner was good, she said. I nodded. It was fine. She glanced at me, then away. Weird running into each other like that. Yeah, small world. She didn't offer anything else. No clarification. No apology. Just stood there sipping coffee from her favorite chipped mug, the one I bought her on our trip to Maine. That trip felt like it belonged to another couple. Eventually, she muttered something about a Zoom call she had to prep for and disappeared upstairs. And I just sat there. The mug she'd used still sat on the counter when I cleaned the kitchen later. A dull ring of coffee at the bottom. I stared at it like it might hold some answer. Didn't. I opened the drawer and looked at the new lingerie again. Still there. Still untouched. It felt like it mocked me now, soft, expensive fabric folded neatly, quietly proving everything she hadn't said out loud. I started going through old texts between us, scrolling back to happier months. There were gaps I hadn't noticed before. Whole days when she barely replied to me, but later claimed she was swamped. There were moments where her tone shifted, where affection became obligation. When did that start? I couldn't trace the exact day, but I could feel the change now, like a phantom pain in a healed wound. Something had been pulling her away from me, inch by inch, while I convinced myself we were just busy. Everyone's busy. It's normal. Life gets hectic. I even found a moment, early spring, I think, when I'd suggested a weekend getaway. Nothing fancy, just us. She turned it down, said she needed time to recharge on her own. Back then, I admired that. I told friends how healthy it was that we gave each other space. Now I wondered who she'd spent that weekend with. I sat at the table until my coffee went cold. My phone buzzed, work emails, group chats, calendar reminders, but I couldn't care. I was somewhere else entirely. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't even sure what I'd say. My brain wanted logic, clarity, facts. But my heart just kept replaying one moment over and over. That glance across the bistro. That flicker of panic in her eyes before she smiled. Like a kid caught sneaking out. And I kept asking myself one question I couldn't shake. Why did she look prepared? A week later, she said she was going away for the weekend. A women's retreat, she told me. Lake house, no phones, just nature and detox. Her voice was light, almost breezy, like she was talking about a yoga class or a farmer's market. She moved around the kitchen while she said it, tossing a few essentials into her old black duffel: socks, a sweater, a thermos. I noticed she folded everything with extra care, too neatly for a casual trip with friends. She didn't look me in the eye the whole time. I nodded, asked a few basic questions. Where's the lake? Who's going? She gave names. A mix of coworkers and names I half recognized from stories: Sam, Talia, maybe Lauren? She didn't say where exactly the retreat was. Just up north, near the woods, and shrugged like that covered it. Total reset, she said again. No phones. We're all going off-grid. I think I need that. Something about the way she emphasized that last part rubbed at me. I told her to have fun, smiled, kissed her on the forehead, told her to stay safe. But inside, my gut twisted. The next morning, she left early. She was wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen in years. One from our honeymoon road trip. Felt like a performance. Like she was trying to wrap herself in nostalgia to avoid suspicion. She kissed me on the cheek like it meant something. Said, "Love you," with just enough breath to pass for genuine. I watched her car pull out of the driveway. I didn't wave. I stood there in the living room for a long time after the door closed, just listening to the silence. I waited an hour before checking the shared location app on my phone. She'd forgotten it was still active. Instead of heading north toward any sort of lake, her location popped up near a residential suburb 2 cities away. A middle-class neighborhood with cul-de-sacs and basketball hoops above garage doors. No lakes, no retreats, no cell signal blackouts, just rows of beige houses and safe sidewalks. I told myself to wait. Maybe she was picking someone up. Maybe she stopped to grab snacks. Maybe her GPS hadn't updated yet. But by noon, she was still there. Same address, same icon, same gnawing in my chest. I didn't call her, didn't text. I just stared at the little blue dot on my screen and tried to breathe. I waited until Saturday morning. I woke up before sunrise, packed a thermos of coffee, and got in the car. It was raining. A soft, steady kind of rain that makes everything feel quieter than usual. I didn't play music, just drove. The highway blurred by. Every mile I got closer, the more I felt like I already knew what I was going to see. It was the kind of neighborhood where people plant matching tulips and bring trash cans in before noon. Mailboxes shaped like birds, porch swings, wind chimes, flags for every holiday, even Arbor Day. I parked half a block away and K** led the engine. Her car was there, in the driveway of a beige one-story with green shutters and a cracked cement path leading up to the door. Nothing stood out about it. Nothing to suggest it was the site of something devastating. I sat there for a long time. At first, I didn't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, just a numb awareness that something important was shifting. It felt like sitting in a car during a snowstorm. Quiet, insulated, slowly being buried. Then the door opened. She stepped outside, barefoot, holding a white ceramic mug. Her hair was tied in a lazy bun, strands falling loose around her face. She wore an oversized t-shirt, faded navy, something unfamiliar, too big for her. It looked like his. The man from the bistro followed. He didn't look surprised to see her there. He didn't sneak around. He just came out, stretched his arms, and walked up behind her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then he wrapped an arm around her waist. She leaned into him. That was it. That was all I needed. I didn't get out of the car. Didn't storm up to the porch or yell her name across the street like a movie scene. I didn't want to be part of whatever script she was rehearsing. I just watched. They stood like that for a while, sipping coffee together from the same mug. At one point, he whispered something into her ear, and she laughed. An easy, unguarded laugh I hadn't heard in months. The kind that comes from comfort, not performance. She looked at home, not like someone visiting, not like someone sneaking around, like someone who had simply moved on. And I realized in that moment, she didn't expect to be caught. Not really. She expected me to trust her, to let the retreat happen without question, to stay in my role, to be the guy who never asks too many questions, who trusts her by default. She bet on my silence. But there I was, seeing it all. I drove away. The rain picked up halfway home. I let it blur the windshield for a while before turning the wipers back on. That night, she came home with damp hair and a reusable bag full of herbal teas and lavender candles. She wore the hoodie again, the one from our honeymoon. Said the lake had been serene, the air incredible. She smiled a lot. Too much. Tiring but good, she said. We did a group meditation in the woods. I feel reset. She used that word again. Reset. I nodded. She smiled. We didn't fight. There was no yelling, no confrontation, no dramatic reveal, because I already had the proof I needed. Not in texts or photos, not in some dramatic confession, just in the way she held that coffee mug, in the way her body leaned into his like it knew how to fit, in the casual comfort of it all. That was what hurt the most, I think. Not the cheating, the comfort. She acted like nothing happened. That Monday, Jessica came home from work with a muffin from my favorite cafe, poppy seed lemon, still warm. She set it on the counter and kissed my cheek like we were back in year 2 of our marriage, like the past weekend hadn't happened, like she hadn't lied to my face and then wrapped herself in another man's arms. The scent of fresh coffee and the muffin mingled in the air, a faint reminder of normalcy that now felt like a taunt. "How was your day?" she asked, casual. Too casual. "Fine," I said. "Yours?" She launched into the story of her day. A presentation she had to revise, someone in her department who got fired for sending memes in a group chat, how her team was stressed about Q4 projections. I listened, nodded, even asked the occasional question. I played along, because that was the part one had learned to play, the role of the normal husband, oblivious to the storm beneath. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just listening, nodding, smiling. I was performing. I was pretending that I didn't know. Pretending I hadn't seen the way she leaned into him, barefoot, that Saturday morning. Pretending I hadn't caught her in the web of lies she'd woven with such meticulous care. I was the silent participant in my own life, a man reciting lines in a play he hadn't auditioned for. I sat there, drinking my coffee slowly, feeling the heat sting my palms, and realized the truth. I had been a participant in her story, not a partner, and it had to end. A few days later, she invited me to a dinner with her colleagues. "Just something casual," she said. "You should come." Her tone was light, but her eyes had that same rehearsed gleam. She was testing me, or maybe just trying to normalize everything for herself. I hesitated. She noticed. "It would mean a lot," she said softly, the kind of sentence designed to nudge you, to manipulate without force. I nodded, said nothing, and decided to go. To witness it, to understand it, to decide my next move. We drove together to a downtown restaurant, modern and sleek. The kind of place with dim lights and muted jazz, where everyone looks 10% better than they do outside the door. Jessica wore a black dress I hadn't seen before. Clean lines, elegant, understated, but sharp in a way that commanded attention. I told her she looked great. She smiled thinly, like it didn't matter, like it wasn't meant for me. When we arrived, the tension was immediate. The table was already half full. I could feel it before I even sat down. The subtle shifts in posture, the small adjustments of hair and collar, the way they glanced at one another like performers checking cues. Everyone greeted her warmly, politely, but the smiles felt calculated, tight. Eyes flicked toward me and away. I was a prop, a placeholder for the narrative she wanted to maintain. The husband in the script that had long since moved on without me. I shook hands, murmured greetings, tried to blend in, tried to be invisible. It didn't work. Everyone sensed the disruption, the out-of-place element. Jessica ordered wine for the table, handled the sommelier with precision, spoke of a client meeting with laughter in her voice and eyes trained on the colleagues. Not me. I could feel the distance between us growing with each word, each laugh, each nod at a joke I didn't hear the punchline to. Her attention was elsewhere, her warmth reserved for them. The husband beside her, the man she used to confide in, now a silent observer of her performance. The conversations flowed around me. A woman across the table caught my eye, then quickly looked away, a faint flicker of guilt or recognition in her expression. Another colleague spoke about football, but his words felt hollow, just background noise. Everyone here was participating in the unspoken agreement. Pretend he doesn't notice. Pretend he doesn't exist. Pretend the lie is reality. And I had been complicit long enough. No more. Halfway through dinner, after the plates were cleared, after the polite smiles and chatter, Jessica raised her glass. To partnership, she said, and to surviving this year. A toast, a casual cheer. But then she added something that pierced through the polite din. And if I were dating someone else, you'd still love me, right? Laughter followed. Some light, some forced. Not from me. I felt the room shrink around me. Each chuckle a reminder of my exclusion, my silence. The stiffness, the polite avoidance, it all burned. I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes flicked to mine for just a moment. No flinch, no remorse, just that practiced, rehearsed smile, the one she wore to deflect the weight of truth. I reached down, slowly, deliberately, and slid my wedding ring off my finger. The metal clicked against the porcelain napkin holder. A small sound, precise, deliberate, louder in my ears than the laughter around us. My hand lingered there for a heartbeat. I looked at her, really looked, and then I stood. No words, no confrontation, no begging, just the quiet declaration that my role had ended. I turned and walked out of the restaurant. The city lights glimmered in the wet pavement, reflecting the calm facade I had donned. The cool night air hit my face. I breathed it in deeply. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt clarity. Ownership. Autonomy. Not rage, not despair, just presence. Behind me, I could hear her murmur something to a colleague. I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. Her attention, her focus, her world had made its choice. I had made mine. And I had no intention of playing the husband in her carefully curated story any longer. No one followed. No one confronted me. I didn't care. That silence was more meaningful than any argument. More absolute than any tearful confession she might have offered. It was my truth. Quiet, deliberate, uncompromising. I walked to my car, keys in hand. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't mind. It was cleansing, purifying. I had stepped out of the role I no longer wanted, leaving behind the script she had written without my consent. For the first time, I felt myself again. I didn't sleep well that night or the night after. The restaurant, the laughter, the glass clinking, the memory of her question still rang in my ears. If I were dating someone else, you'd still love me, right? I kept repeating it over and over, like a mantra that refused to break. Except it wasn't comforting. It wasn't enlightening. It was confirmation. The next morning, I got up before dawn. The house was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick of the kitchen clock. I poured coffee, black, and sipped it slowly, letting the heat settle in my chest. My hands shook slightly, not from the caffeine, but from the storm I was carrying inside. I had already removed the ring, walked out in the cold, and felt the weight shift off my shoulders. But something still gnawed at me. Proof. I needed more than her carelessness, more than my own observations. I needed truth, unspoken and undeniable. I drove to Randy's house, her father, retired mechanic. Hands that had known grease and calluses for decades. Eyes that were both kind and tired, like someone who had seen too much but never enough. His kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and oil, a mixture that somehow felt grounding. I explained everything as calmly as I could, step by step. The dinner, the hotel, the barefoot morning, the man's arm around her waist, the deliberate comfort. I laid it all out, not with accusations, but as facts, as a narrative he couldn't dispute. He listened quietly, head tilted, elbows on the counter, fingers steepled. Not once did he interrupt. When I paused, expecting anger, disappointment, anything, he exhaled slowly. Then he spoke. Not words of denial, not excuses, just simple acknowledgement. "Matthew," he said, voice low, careful. "She stopped talking about you months ago." The weight of that statement hit me like a fist. Months, not days, months. I had noticed the subtle changes, the perfume, the late meetings, the disappearance of photos, but months? It was bigger than I imagined. It wasn't just a weekend or a single lapse. It had been a gradual drift, a slow erosion of our world that I hadn't wanted to see. I wanted to speak, to shout, to demand why, but the silence of the kitchen pressed in, heavier than any conversation. Randy's admission wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it didn't need to be. It was proof. No argument, no denials, just truth. He told me she no longer spoke of me. Stories, memories, casual mentions of the mundane joys of marriage. They had vanished from her words. A blank space where I used to exist. He had noticed, reluctantly, quietly, but hadn't confronted me. Didn't think it was his place. Perhaps he still didn't. Perhaps it never would have been. "I'm sorry," he added, almost to himself. "I should have seen it sooner." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pace. He just sat there, hands resting on the counter, eyes meeting mine briefly. Honest, tired, unflinching. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I drank my coffee, letting the bitterness anchor me. I needed it. Needed the grounding, needed the confirmation. It was more than the bistro, the hotel, the laughter. It was evidence that what I had suspected wasn't a fluke or paranoia. It was reality. Randy offered the guest room, a place to stay if I needed space. I accepted without hesitation, dragging my bag into the small room. Sparse, quiet, calm, no judgments, just a place to exist without pretense, to process, to plan. That evening, back in my own home, the absence was deafening. Her scent lingered faintly in the curtains, in the faint warmth of the living room where she usually sat. Her favorite mug, chipped on the rim, still on the counter. I stared at it for a while, tracing the lines with my mind, replaying how she had filled that space with laughter, conversation, casual affection, before it all became curated and distant, before I realized she no longer included me in the narrative of her life. I moved through the house like a ghost, touching the spaces we once shared, noting the small betrayals embedded in ordinary objects. The empty drawer where the lingerie had been tucked away, the linen I had washed that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume, the cushion she always rearranged when I sat on the sofa. Everything was ordinary, yet nothing belonged to me anymore. I found a stack of letters, notes she had left in drawers, tiny things that once seemed innocent, grocery lists, reminders, the occasional love note. Now, even these felt tainted. I picked them up one by one, and though none of them spoke directly to the man I'd seen her with, the context of her deception transformed their tone. Each word seemed to whisper what she had hidden, the parts of her life she had reclaimed for someone else. I didn't read them all. Couldn't. The weight was too much. Some I set aside, planning to burn them later. Not in anger, in acknowledgement, a ritual of closure I needed before moving forward. I thought about confronting her father further, but he had already said enough. His honesty had provided more than a confrontation ever could. No dramatics, no explosive revelations, just the kind of truth that sinks in quietly, like water seeping through the cracks. I understood then that sometimes proof didn't need words. Evidence didn't need confession. The absence of denial, the honest acknowledgement from someone who had observed her actions without interference, was all that was required. That night, alone in the guest room, I planned the next steps. Not in anger, not in desperation, but in calm clarity. I could have confronted her. I could have yelled, demanded explanations, searched for apologies. But I realized none of that would change what had already happened. It was over in a sense that words couldn't reverse. I made coffee again, stared out the window at the quiet street. The evening was still, a subtle hum of life outside, neighbors locking doors, a car passing, the distant bark of a dog, grounded me. I felt the clarity growing, the certainty that I no longer needed to perform for anyone, not even her. Her choices were hers. My response would be deliberate and owned, not reactive. I didn't call her. I didn't leave messages. I didn't check locations or texts. That part of our life, the part of me that had felt tethered by suspicion and unspoken truths, was now paused. I was present in the quiet, alone but whole, stronger than I had felt in months. By the next morning, I had resolved that confrontation wasn't necessary. The proof existed. The knowledge was undeniable. Her father's quiet confirmation, her absence of mention of me, the footprints of her weekend. The evidence was concrete, irrevocable. And I didn't need to wait for her to admit anything. I had already seen, already understood, and was ready to act. I packed lightly, left a note for Randy thanking him for his honesty, and drove back to my house. Each mile I replayed the weekend in my mind, not with bitterness, not with vengeance, but with clarity. The house, once a shared space, now awaited decisions. Objects could remain or leave, memories could linger or fade, but the story had shifted. I had the power to write the next chapter. When I returned, the house was quiet, too quiet, yet it felt right. A space free from deception, where I could finally breathe, think, and plan. The kitchen, the counters, the table, silent witnesses to the truth I now held in my hands. No theatrics needed, no confrontation required, just proof, clean, undeniable, and mine to acknowledge. And in that silent kitchen, I finally accepted it. She was gone from my life in all the ways that mattered, even if she still occupied the physical space of our home. Proof didn't need words. Confirmation didn't need confrontation. I didn't have to speak to see, to understand, to begin reclaiming myself. By morning, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from Jessica. Apologies, please, claims of misunderstanding. A photo arrived, my wedding ring in her palm. The caption asked if this was really the end. I didn't reply. A few days later, I checked her location again. The same house. I drove there but stayed in the car. Through the window, I saw a box filled with handwritten notes, words about feeling alive, about love, about belonging, none for me. I took the box home and burned it in the fireplace. Her other belongings went into black bags on the porch. Silence replaced the noise, and with it, a strange relief. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The chapter was closed. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. Signatures, dates. The house stayed with me. She took the car. I sold the ring online. The buyer's note read, "Hope this brings you luck." I replied, "Just don't let it fall on a restaurant floor." No dramatic closure. No final conversation. I stepped outside into the cold air and felt steady, anchored. For the first time in a long while, my life felt fully mine. Quietly, deliberately, I reclaimed it, piece by piece, breath by breath. The betrayal had ended, but so had the fear, the doubt, and the endless playing of roles. I was free.